And let me invite to the stage David Johnston. So he's a renowned technologist in Web3 and AI. So without further ado, David, please take the stage.
Hey guys, thanks for the warm welcome, Max. Yeah, just as a way of background, I've been involved in crypto and AI since 2012. Most people probably know me for creating the framework for decentralized applications in 2013. Really, the thesis was to bring the things that made Bitcoin so compelling, open source, peer-to-peer, a blockchain backend, and a token, as a generalized model for other protocols that wanted to build similar infrastructure. So that sort of caught on. Ethereum adopted that Dapps protocol as part of their framework. And I've sort of been focused on effectively pushing forward freedom technology higher and higher up the tech stack. So from Bitcoin to the work on Ethereum to the first, second layers, and now my focus is primarily on decentralized AI. And I believe that freedom of intelligence is just as critical to the future as having sound money or the ability to execute smart contracts. So I'll talk a little bit today about one of the open source projects I'm a contributor to, which is Morpheus, and really the vision of having smart agents that are owned by individual people. And I think this is one of the most important things that we can work on going forward, is the idea of putting humans at the heart of crypto and AI. And it's really a great combination, right? We've built for 15 years now this programmable money. We have all these smart contracts. And in order to use AI as the front end, we need to connect it to these blockchains as the back end. And so that's what Morpheus in 2023, some anonymous developers released a white paper saying, in order for this to really work, there has to be a network that creates the primitives so that people can build these smart agents, right? Just the way Ethereum provided the primitives for smart contracts, we need something very similar for the primitives of smart agents. Namely, they need inference, access to these large language models in order to provide brain power. They need access to agentic tools so they can call out and take specific action for the user. And they also need access to context and memories, right? So these are each important pieces. The router that Morpheus has built for the inference lets anyone host a large language model and provide it to anyone else in the world. And so this creates permissionless access to the underlying brain power. But then you need the same thing for the agentic tools, right? You guys have probably heard of the effort by the Ethereum community related to 8004. This is an Ethereum proposal related to a registry for agents that is able to establish an identity, validate what the agent does, and then also record the reputation of that agent. And those three building blocks sort of give you a way to discover all the agents that are available. And so the Morpheus community has been contributing to that 8004 standard as part of Nethermind and Chaos Chain and others that are contributing to that. And that provides effectively the next piece, right? Because these large language models are generally intelligent, but they also need access to very narrowly tailored agents that are capable of taking specific action. So that's sort of the next big step. And then finally, there's the concept of context or memory. The agent is only useful if it knows who you are and what you want to accomplish and what are your past actions. So you have to bring all of those components together, and you have to give it a wallet, right? A means of transacting. So a lot of what the community has spent time on is connecting this world of AI tools to this world of crypto tools. And so if you have the private key, now all of a sudden, I have the authority and the ability to have my agent interact with smart contracts, to make payments on my behalf. Many of you guys have probably seen the huge wave of interest in X402. This is an initiative by Coinbase and Cloudflare. They created a foundation together, and they're effectively trying to revive this idea of a native internet protocol for payments. You might be familiar with 404, which is the error code when a server is not available, but 402 was set aside in the early days of the internet for a payments code. There wasn't at the time a good solution for native internet payments, and so it sort of sat on the shelf, if you will. But now that we have stable coins and smart contracts and layer twos that are capable of transactions in a second or less, we have all of the technology now to build that use case. So 402 is really interesting because it creates an easy way for agentic payments to happen. So instead of going to a website and only receiving information, all of a sudden your agent can go to a URL. It can receive the 402 code and say, oh, it's 25 cents if I want to purchase this report or access this tool or agent, make that payment, and then immediately receive the asset or information in return. So this has really unlocked a whole new set of business models, moving away from the idea that everything has to be software as a service and you have to subscribe to everything to get access, but rather that you'll be able to do these atomic transactions and very quickly your agent can do things on your behalf, and spend a very small amount of money to potentially do one action. So all of that you can think of almost as like a Morpheus virtual machine. Just like Ethereum offered a virtual machine for smart contracts, Morpheus is doing that for smart agents. So where I think this is important and critical to the future of Ukraine and all countries generally is there's an opportunity to rebuild these systems with a lot more efficiency, a lot more speed, and a much more modern way if you start with blockchains and smart contracts and smart agents as a starting point, right? And I would describe this as we're moving towards an agentic web, right? Most of you are familiar with the 90s and the 2000s. Everybody was building websites. That transitioned to people building apps, right? In the mobile context on your phone. And now that's transitioning very quickly to these apps are being reimagined as agents. So everybody is offering an endpoint to their existing app or website in a form where the agent can interact with it. And this is incredibly important because if 99% of intelligence in the future is going to be AI, I really want to own that personal AI and have it acting on my behalf, right? And able to access the information that I want without censorship and in a permissionless manner. So, I would encourage people that, this trend is really just at the beginning, right? What we've seen so far in AI is information, right? Oh, I can ask a question, I can create an image, I can create a video. But what this is transitioning us towards is AI taking action on your behalf, right? And that's really what smart agents make possible. So yeah, I'll keep it fairly short there and happy to engage in questions and dialogue. For me, that's the more interesting and exciting part of this. But encourage people to dive in. It's really reminding me of the early days when I got into Bitcoin in 2012 or helped with the launch of Ethereum. There's sort of this whole new frontier now that these new tools exist where we can rebuild and reimagine all of the things that have come before. So with that, I'll stop there and we can open it up.
Great, thank you. And I would like to remind anybody who would like to ask the question, you can use the YouTube section for that. But I also have a few questions on my own. So I don't know how close is it to what you do, but lately I've seen a lot of competitions for AI in trading or in assets management. Could you maybe share your insights on how that's going?
Sure. So this is a natural fit given, agents or high frequency trading or bots, as they used to be called in the trading world, are 99% of the trades in the stock market. We're seeing a similar transition here where somebody can express an intent. Hey, I want to get the best yield, or I want to do a swap the model understands what the user is trying to do. So let's take an example like Wharton, right, which is an application that does this. And then it's able to take action on your behalf because it's connected to your wallet. So this really opens up the world to people who are non-technical, because Web3 today is still very engineer centric, and most people don't know how a smart contract works or which protocol to trust or how to navigate all the interfaces. And the big benefit for me here is AI is like the ultimate UI, right? You just tell it what you want, and all of a sudden it can take the action and it can lead you in a path which is safe and efficient, maybe gets you the best return. And so, yeah, we've seen an explosion of these type of called them yield agents or trading agents or swapping agents. Many of the wallets are working to integrate the AI models directly into the wallet, so you can talk to the wallet and tell it what you want to accomplish. So I think we'll see this from a bunch of different angles, but my hope is it opens it up to a much broader set of people than could access it before, right? That's what we saw with the internet, right? I'm old enough to remember the early days of the web, and people were very dismissive of the internet. Oh, it'll never catch on, they said. It's just for engineers. Nobody knows how to type in IP addresses and navigate these directories. But as soon as there was a search engine, as soon as you could just tell Google what you wanted, and all of a sudden it curated the entire internet for you, and all you had to do was click on a link. Yep, that's the one I want. The user experience went from something a few million people could do to something billions of people could do. And so I think we're at that very similar tipping point here, right? Today, there are about 700 million people with a Web3 wallet, right? And many of them going forward won't even know that it's Web3, right? They'll just be getting access to these capabilities in what looks like a very Web2 type of interface. And I think that's great. That's what will get us past a billion users up into the multiple billions of users. And so for me, that's the big benefit AI is bringing to crypto. And then it goes the other way, right? AIs need a payment mechanism. Nobody's giving out bank accounts to AIs, right? They don't pass the KYC test or whatever, right? And so, but they can use crypto natively. And why would they want to use banks? It takes 3 days to send a wire. It has all these fees. They're going to use something that's programmatic, web native, instant, it's cheap, right? And what I'm describing are Web3 payment rails. I think stablecoins will this year surpass 35 trillion in volumes. Visa did 16 trillion last year. So we're at that mainstream, right? So it's it's going to be exciting to see all the applications people build with these agents.
So you see it as a potential like a counter protection. So you don't even need to understand all of this like hashes and addresses.
Yeah, and I'm comfortable with that as long as it's my AI, right? I it'll be very extractive if I'm using some big tech company or some government issued AI. I want one that is a fiduciary to me, right? Is trying to get me the best outcome. And that's important. We've sort of lost some of that in the internet, right? It started that way, but over time, the big tech companies sort of gobbled up all the data, and they manipulated the algorithms to show you information that not necessarily the best information, but what they were advertised and paid by advertisers to show you, right? I experienced this recently. I was, trying to set a doctor's appointment for a kid, and, all of a sudden, I noticed I was on the wrong page, and Google had shoved an ad into Google Maps, and I ended up at the wrong doctor's webpage because they had paid as the advertiser, right? To sort of try to pivot or move my behavior in a different way. And it's like, if AI is going to be, all the brain power out there, I want my own brain power that I can really own. Just like I want Bitcoin that I can own, and no government can decide whether my currency should be worthless or not, right? Which is a common experience for most people globally. And the same for smart contracts on Ethereum, right? I want them to be able to run and operate and be uncorruptible, right? I don't have to trust a contract in a court. I can just use a self-executing smart contract, right? That is why $3.5 trillion of assets have flowed on chain the last 15 years. And I think that's only going to accelerate.
Great. You also mentioned the term agentic previously, and earlier we had a session with the Ministry for Digital Transformation of Ukraine on digital economy, and the vision stated by the ministry, like initially it was like digital country, and now it's like agentic country, and there are some first pilots of services of like advisory on legislation or whatever on services in Ukraine. But could you like ideate, or like in your perfect future, what does it mean, the agentic country, how it could work?
Well, there's no perfect future, but I'll say that I think it'll be a better future if I have an AI and it understands my intents, and I can easily interact with the services of the government, without having to manually do them. Like, nobody wants to fill out forms. But if my agent knows all my information, it can fill out the form, right? And what it would have taken me an hour or two, to fill out some requirement, if I can all of a sudden complete that in under a minute, that's really compelling, right? You can reduce the burden and cost of bureaucracy, right? So whether it's, registering a new car or transferring a land title, all of these things are complex and will take time to port over. But we have the most powerful tool we've ever had, right? I was yesterday having a conversation, and I had my AI record the brainstorming session. And afterwards, it took a couple of minutes to transcribe the entire 3 hours. And then it took about 10 seconds to write a beautiful 3-page report about that conversation, right? And, that's where we're headed, is this multiplying of your brain power. So I wrote an article earlier this year defining brain power as a unit of measure, just like we've defined horsepower as a unit of measure, right? And I propose in the paper 3.3 tokens per second, which is pretty close to a human will normally say about 2.5 words per second, right? So if we quantify that as a a unit of brain power, an H100 can do about 300 brain power per hour, right? And you look at the number of chips and how much we're spending on building data centers. This is the year that we've tipped over where there's more AI brain power than there is organic human brain power globally, right? 50 trillion hours versus 7 trillion hours. And that's wonderful. We're all getting now this 5x on the organic brain power. And so the value of a human is as the free will, as the origin and the oracle for their preferences and what they want to accomplish in the world, right? The AI has no biological impulses. It doesn't need to live somewhere and want to meet people and all these things that humans want to do. And so the bottleneck is moving from doing the work to articulating what work you want to do, right? And so that's the shift. And to answer your question, I think the big payoff is if we can get the bureaucracy and the corruption out of the way, people can move a lot faster and build a lot faster, and you could unleash sort of this huge, productivity gains and economic growth going forward. To me, that's the benefit.
Would you consider like the usage of AI in the context of legislation, or decision making, voting? Like, would a smart agent, would you trust a smart agent to vote on your behalf, for example, or it should only prepare you some information? But
so this is a core question in AI between autonomous and intent-based. So a lot of people imagine that the AI will become fully autonomous. I don't either want that or think that's the case. I think what's much more realistic is intent-based, right? So I don't need the AI to spin off and work towards its own ends. I want it to authentically represent my goals, right? My preferences, my tasks, my jobs, what I'm trying to do. And so if you read the Ray Dalio paper that he published a few weeks ago about his concept of an AI clone, right? And he's trained one up. I saw Jesse at Base recently trained one up. Like all these thought leaders who have a lot of public data, like, wait a minute, I'm answering all these questions one by one. I could just train an agent that represents me based on all my public information, and then I can scale. I can have 1,000 conversations, and if it's well enough tuned, it can sort of well represent what I would say, the resources I would point people to, the examples I would use. And so I think we are headed towards that reality where everybody has an agent that's representing them, right? And think how powerful that is. Like, I want my agent working when I'm sleeping, when I'm on vacation, when it's the weekend. Like, the idea that can be acting on my behalf 24/7 is very similar to how we think about the economy on chain, right? We don't close like the banks. The blockchain doesn't turn off at 5 p.m. on Friday. Like it just keeps working all the time, right? The smart contracts execute 24/7. And so we ought to have agents that are doing the same thing, working for us 24/7. I think will be very, very powerful. So in that context, I would probably be okay with an agent that evaluates, a 5,000 page bill, and which nobody reads today, right? That's the current state. Nobody reads these things, right? They're just relying on a few people that wrote them or a few people that reviewed them. But I could have a much better insight into what the bill actually says, and I could have a better matching to, like, does it represent what I think is best, for the country, right? Does it include free trade or whatever my priorities are, right? And then I can make a much more informed decision. Even if I push the button at the end of the day, I've gone from very uninformed to highly informed, right? Using my AI, but it's still intent based. Could I automate that last moment of pushing the button? Yeah, but I don't think that's the best. I think you can use AI to do 99% of the analysis work if you've got it well tuned to what you want, right? And every interaction is another opportunity for you to say, oh, this is my preference. This is how I would do it. This is what I would say, right? And it's going to get better over time. So that's what I think we're headed towards, but it's certainly better than the reality in which nobody reads these bills or is really actively involved in governance. And that's true in the US and Ukraine and everywhere, because there's only so much time in the day. Reading 5,000 pages is really tough. But there's important information in there, and you'd get a much better level of transparency. Any citizen could know what's in the bill. Oh, wait a minute. This group shoved that in there so they get them the prep. Like, that's not okay. Like, those things would come to light much faster if it was read by an AI, and you take as a presumption that you have transparency during the creation process and after it's published. Not this like, oh, well, first we have to pass it, then you can read it. Like the famous quote from Nancy Pelosi, right? That's not okay, right?
Mm.
So I think it can be a net improvement if it's done well.
Thanks. And what's your take on the AI security? How a regular Joe could, really trust his AI and not being manipulated by some underlying, dynamics, or even the dynamics that it wasn't intentionally put, but just a bug in the system, some weird pattern.
Software will never be perfect. But if you've seen the effort in the Ethereum community for 8004 and these registries that we're creating of the agents for what they are, validation of what tasks they do, and knowing their reputation for how well they execute them, you have a lot of transparency about the agents that you're using. Right now, it's the opposite. Use OpenAI, or Claude, or they're a black box, right? It's completely opaque. I have no idea model, agent, context, what rules or parameters, or if it's censoring something. I have no idea, right? As soon as you move to an on-chain agent system, I have complete transparency. Like, oh, of course I want to use the agent that has billions of dollars of transaction history and has been proven for years and has 10 audits, not the one from Joe yesterday who has $10 in it, right? Like, you can see, as soon as you have transparency, you can see reputation very clearly. right? And then it becomes simple for my AI to, pick the agent that has the best reputation with the, best record and has been validated and proven that this is what it's doing. The alternative is not very good. Like, these agents are going to be used by bad actors to manipulate people. You're going to have 200 IQ agents trying to advertise, persuade, manipulate your behavior every moment of every day, right? And so what we need is a firewall. It has to be an agentic firewall. You need an AI that's filtering all of this stuff. We take that for granted today. Use the example of email, right? Email used to be full of junk and spam and scams and stuff like that. And then Gmail and others got very good at filtering out all of the bad actors. Now it has warnings, this might be spam or scam, and a lot of it just goes into your junk folder, right? We're going to need the same thing for AI. So we need one AI actively protecting us. Like, I can't possibly know all the context of every message I receive, or so many people are tricked into clicking a link. Oh, I didn't mean to, do that. And so having an AI constantly on your behalf doing that, I think, is going to be critical for going forward. So transparency and an AI firewall are going to be table stakes going forward.
Okay, well, I think maybe it's a good time to conclude our conversation. Thank you for so many insights, and we're happy to have you here.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Max.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye. Yeah, and this is basically the end of day 2. Let me quickly tell you about the day 3. So tomorrow we start with Dr. Guyan Benedict speaking about the governing of ecosystems and application. He's a great expert from the PricewaterhouseCoopers and former CTO of Salesforce in Australia. We will have Kirill Khomyakov from the Binance leading the region here next. Some experts from the ministry, some academics from top universities of Ukraine, Daniela Barbosa from the Linux Foundation. So thanks for staying with us, and hope to see you tomorrow. Have a great rest of the day. Ciao, ciao.